And so first of all, I think the first question is training specifically for fighting, combatives, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
in terms of the actual fight training. So not the resistance training or things like that, but just what modalities and things like that you like to do
Yeah.
to get better fighting attributes, I guess.
To be honest, it's kind of a crazy question, really, isn't it? Because there's a whole
Mm.
group of people out there that do a lot of training for fighting.
Yeah.
You know, um, you look at boxers, you look at MMA fighters, you look at I don't know BJJ guys, Muay. These are all pro athletes
Yeah.
that train. So all I will say is, well, the stuff they're doing is probably the stuff that you should be doing. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, you must find this as well because we've all been around a little while that everybody wants to copy their heroes. We all do.
Yeah.
I mean, we do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody does. If you want to be a sprinter, you're going to start. Your hero is going to be Usain Bolt, isn't it? You're going to
That's
have
it.
you're going to have some model in there that you want to aspire to be. In basketball, LeBron or whatever, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But it seems that a lot of people, I say people, it's a bit general, but a lot of people that you come across only seem to be willing to copy to a point where
Mm.
it's easy. All right.
Yes.
So what I experience is they want to copy the tattoos, the facial hair, the
Shirts.
hairstyles, the clothes, the equipment, the gear, but they don't actually look at how does that group of people actually train?
Yeah.
you know. So you see these combative boot camps, don't you? And they're like screaming and shouting. It's like, listen, I know we've all watched like Full Metal Jacket, and we've all seen that Paris Island U.S. Marine Corps training,
Mm.
and military training is a little bit like that to start with, but it soon stops. you know,
Yeah.
it doesn't continue like that into when guys go into special units and things like that. There's no screaming and shouting like that. So why are you doing that? You
Yeah.
know, if you really want to copy how those guys train, you start training really smart. You start training really honestly. You start taking accountability and you start doing thousands of reps.
Yeah.
You stop validating yourself and you start testing yourself. If you really want to copy your favorite MMA fighter, go and watch how an MMA fighter trains in the gym.
Mm.
Don't just buy the same shorts he's got and
Yeah.
get the same tattoo on your chest or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bit of a moot point really for that. How shall I train for a fight? It says, well, like a fighter, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a fighter. So I think the thing there is you've got to think, all right, what exactly do I want to train? And you think, okay, you look at say a combat sport, all right, and if anybody ever says to me again that, oh well, that's not like a real fight, it's just I lose the will to live sometimes. There's only so many times you can have this conversation with people. It's like, yeah, okay. I even saw a guy who purports to be an expert recently, and he said it out loud that combat sports have got no place in a real fight on the street. It's like, well, no, you'll tend to find that, and I think that was almost verbatim what he said. It's like I think you'll find that combat sports have got the only place for real fights on the street because they're the only
Mm.
ones doing things that actually fucking work. We know they work because people get knocked out by them and get their arms fucked up by them, and people
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
choked out for real, and we can see it actually happen. And it's not in some glorious anecdote of a fight somebody says they once had to
Yeah.
prove it. We see it. You can see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anybody ever comes back to me again with this, oh yeah, sport versus street argument, it's like, give me a fucking break, man.
Yeah.
Really. So
Yeah.
what you're drawing attention to is that, oh, but there's rules in a sports fight. I says, yeah, I know. And that guy will still fuck you up with the rules. Imagine what he'll do without them. What you think you can bite somebody? Well, he can do it, but he can put you in a position where you can't stop him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You think you can
Yeah.
gouge an eye? Watch what he can do. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Come on,
Yeah.
please. It's just
Yeah.
it gets old after a while. But so they've got a small skill set, and what they work on is increased repetitions and progressive overload and things like that. And yeah, there's so much base work you can do. If you're striking, you got to hit things. You
Yeah.
can't get away from that. You know, you got to hit things that want to get hit to start with, punch bags,
Yeah.
pads. Then you got to start hitting things that don't want to get hit. you know,
Yeah.
other people, or pads that are acting like another person, you
Yeah.
know. So that's fairly simple. I don't particularly like sparring the heavy bag anymore. You know,
Yeah.
treating the heavy bag like it's sort of, and having like a sparring in and out, you know, having a bit of a spar with it. I don't do that because I'm not keen on it's an inverted movement profile, isn't it? The bag stays still and you go in and out. Whereas
Yeah.
when you're fighting a person, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I see very bad habits coming out of that. You know, I've
Yeah.
noticed myself developing them. You hit and then you step back.
Yeah.
It's like, why have I just done that? You know, to be quite honest, you know,
Yeah.
that doesn't tend to happen in real fights.
Yeah.
You know, people don't hit and step back. They hit and then step forward and hit again and hit again and hit again and hit again and hit again, don't they? You know, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
There is no kind of in little flurry, step back, circle around a little bit more. It tends to be once the button gets pressed, it stays pressed until the fight's over.
Yeah.
So in my mind anyway, my model is to try and replicate that.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I go on a bag, I'll just bash the bag. You know, I
Yeah.
won't spar with it in and out. I'll probably just use it more as a catcher for my shots, just to
Yeah.
work on the power of the shot, rather than any kind of tactical kind of leanings or combinations as such. That's how I use a bag anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where I think with us, me coming from a fight background, helped me understand that, yeah, everything you said, you gotta hit things. It needs to be physically taxing. You need to get thrown around. You need to be able to absorb punishment, and you need
Mm-hmm.
to be able to react and respond to different
Yeah,
stimulus, i.e., people. So that's where bag work, pad work, sparring,
yeah,
shadow boxing, all of that stuff. I think is just you got to do it. And if it doesn't look like what you were saying, what MMA fighters or whoever do in terms of what they're doing. Like I guess
yep,
the intricacies of it are different. Like I know myself, if I do bag work or whatever, like you were saying, if it's specifically for combative self-defense, it's like a 10-second flurry, break, 10-second flurry,
yep,
break. It's not in out. I do both because, I still like to spar and
yeah,
still
yeah,
do all the kickboxing and that wrestling and all that kind of stuff. But if it's specifically for that, it's just, yeah, like you said, 10 seconds, maximum effort, maximum output in minimum amount of time is what I try and encourage here.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah. And yeah, get
Like I
them
say though,
feel.
it's like, you know, the answer's there. If you want to train if you want to train for a fight, train like a fighter, and there's plenty of them
Yeah.
around to look at. You know,
Yeah.
it's not rocket science, and it's not, why are we trying to reinvent the wheel a little bit? I mean,
Yeah.
to be quite honest though, if you look at, say, I'd say maybe boxing might have the edge because it's been around the longest, so it's developed for longer. It's
Yeah.
evolved further because it's been around longer. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, although MMA obviously is, you know, is again,
Yeah.
you know, it's not in its infancy anymore, is it? If you know what I mean, it's
No.
developed a bit. And
Yeah.
there are more progressive coaches out there, and there are less progressive coaches out there. You know, and I think the funny thing is though that the more progressive and the less progressive still produce great fighters. So
Yeah.
you know, you don't have to argue apples and oranges that much. You're going to get there.
Yeah.
It's I mean, an example would be if you looked at something completely out of the realms of this. If you look at bodybuilding, for instance, all right, just as a model for physical training, people have vastly different protocols for how they lift.
Yeah.
The amount of resistance, the amount of weight, the amount of reps, the amount of sets. You know, you got the guys who do the heavy duty lifting where they just do one massive set, and you got the guys who do lots of, the pump stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
They both stood on the podium together. You
Yeah.
know, the difference between them coming first or second is a couple of points. So it all works. That's the
Yeah.
thing. It all works. There's no
Yeah.
point in getting too obsessed with the minutiae of the protocol. As long as I think you're getting overload, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's got to be intelligent overload, isn't it? No one's going to walk in a gym and go, okay, I'm going to overload. I'm going to deadlift 500 kilos. You know, it's like, come on, you've got to be sensible about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If your max is 100, you're going for 105.
Yeah.
That's the overload you're looking at, isn't it? Not
Yeah. Yeah.
500. It's like, no. So I think with this is, again, for fight stuff, you've got to figure out, well, am I striking? Am I grappling? Am I doing both? Yeah. The problem is though, we've got a human-human interface, haven't we? So
Yeah.
we need a human. You just need it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't get around that. And I'll always say to people when they ask me about solo training protocols, it's like, well, do what you can, but don't do what you can't.
Yeah.
You know, because
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
will always come up with convoluted things of training by themselves. And sometimes you just got to say, look, we can't. I don't have a guy to train with. I don't have another person. So
Yeah.
that's going to limit the stuff I can do. So why don't we focus on what we can do and leave what we can't do until we can do it when I get a guy?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, I think you end up chasing your tail too much and inventing crazy methods that aren't really that effective. And
Yeah.
the time you spent doing that, you could have worked on something far better. You
Yeah.
know, if you want to strike things and you don't have anything to hit, that's a problem.
Hmm.
You know, if you want to practice grappling and you don't have somebody to grapple with, it's going to be a problem. So stop trying to find workarounds to that, in my opinion, and just work on what you can do. Can
Yeah.
you work on your conditioning more? You know, can you work on the base components of what will help your striking when you do get the chance to hit something? Or
Yeah.
can you work on the base components of what will help your grappling when you do get a guy to grapple with? So I think that's a good way of training by yourself, is to acknowledge your limitations.
Yeah.
You know, stop punching pads that you're holding yourself, for instance. I find that ridiculous, although it's very super of the day, isn't it? At the moment, it's very popular. I think it's popular because it's easy, it's
Yeah.
convenient,
Yeah.
and I think it has the illusion of being effective, but I really don't think it is. And if somebody wants to argue that with me, fine, I'll argue it with you, because we can argue how you may think you're holding on to a guy and punching him, and it's exactly the same, but it isn't.
No.
Yeah,
No.
you've fundamentally changed the mechanics of what's getting pushed and what's getting pulled,
Yeah.
etc., etc. And on yeah, I just find it's an easy out for an instructor at a seminar. You know,
Yeah.
it's
And
easy.
yeah. And particularly if you say it's reactive or you're working on reactions, because if you're controlling it, I don't know what's going to happen. There's no reactions
Yeah,
in.
you know what? I
Yeah.
find that it's like playing both sides in a chess game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who wins?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, yeah. You've
Yeah.
got to learn the whole script and you've got to play both parts. No,
Yeah.
you know, you're not
Yeah.
getting from that what you think you're getting from that. You're not getting the cognitive arousal that you would get from an actual change of circumstances because you're creating the change. So
Yeah.
you know you're not getting the brain element that you think you're getting from that. You know the
No, not
mechanics
at all.
change as well. You know it becomes it's again it's just convenient and it's easy and that's why it's become popular. You
Yeah.
know, and I think there's a whole load of things like that that I don't go with. There's a lot of gimmick training. I don't like, for instance, you know the headband and the elastic and the ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, because how do you end up punching that? Not like any punch that you're ever going to throw.
No.
You don't throw a real punch at it. You end up patting it with your fists because you end up playing the game of getting good at keeping that ball away from your face. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are you getting good at? You know,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
are you
crazy.
building are you
Yeah.
building hand-eye coordination? Well, yeah, you probably are, but could you do that in a way that also benefits throwing an actual punch? You know, in the same way that I don't really like the classic speed bag,
Yeah.
you know, because people will say, "Oh, it's for hand and eye coordination." Well, how
No.
can it be? Because guys do it with their eyes closed.
Yeah. It's just
So
rhythm.
yeah, yeah, it's for building stamina in your shoulders, is what it's for.
Yeah. I used
To
to
keep
use
your
it
hands up for
to warm
longer.
up my shoulders. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's all.
exactly
That's what
what
it's
I used
for,
to do.
really.
Yeah.
I think a far better version, if you want to do that, get the double end bag. You
Yeah.
know, the floor to ceiling ball. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
what people call them out there.
Yeah. Floor to ceiling.
That's
Yeah.
that is a very good tool for that. That really
Yeah.
does build now hand-eye coordination. There is
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
an element of rhythm to that, but you know you can get out of that if you don't want to play that game.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that there is a far more beneficial tool than the tennis ball attached to elastic to your head
Yeah.
or the speed bag. that would be, that was a firm favorite of mine for a long time. When I broke my hands quite a lot when I was younger doing stupid things. So I couldn't train on heavy bags for a while. So I switched over to using that. And I thought that did me the world of good. If you can hit that, you can hit anybody. Nobody can move their head that fast. So if you can hit that, you're playing. And also it's good that you might not have the actual load bearing beam to put a heavy bag on. But that doesn't really damage any ceilings, if you know what I mean. There's not enough load on it to structurally pull the house down, like a bag can. So I think that's a very valuable tool.
As you get older
Pardon?
as well, like I use it a lot now because it doesn't hurt my joints.
Oh yeah.
As opposed to a heavy bag.
Yeah. I think it's a really good tool, to be honest. And people get carried away with power, don't they? They want to put a number value on how hard they can hit. And it gets to a point where it becomes academic and it doesn't really matter because hard enough is enough. It's like looking at reaction speeds. Do you really need it down to the point whatever of a second to know that? Or do you just need to know that you're faster or you're slower? I think you can get carried away with the academia, with the numbers, the data, the metrics too much. And it leads you away then from training, from actually getting on with it. You start getting obsessed, don't you, with how hard can I hit? Do you need to have a number on that? Really? I don't know, but punching a bag, no person's ever going to stand that still and absorb that shock like a bag does. So you get a false version of how hard you can hit. That's why people can hit a pad held on someone's chest a lot harder than they can hit a focus pad held on a man's hand. Because the target has changed, hasn't it? The target gives when you hit it. You have to hit it with more snap. You can't crush a pad held on someone's hand, but you can crush a punch bag. You can crush that pad that's got the digital thing attached to it. It tells you how many pounds per square inch or whatever you hit it. But a man's head isn't going to be like that. It's a different field. So that's why I think again the double end bag is a much better tool than a lot of other stuff out there. I like the Cobra bag. The one that's on the spring.
It's in the,
I think those are fantastic. If you get a good one, they are fantastic to train on. Because again, you get that target that doesn't push back on your hand, so you've got to hit it quick because there's nothing to crush. And a lot of people, when they punch, they crush the thing rather than they actually hit it with impact. They're pushing to the target too much. There's too much weight on the target. There's not enough snap. There's not enough of that destructive impact. If we're going to get into the specifics of it. So that's training for hitting. If you're going to train grappling, well, if you don't have a person, you've got to think about what am I doing? Well, I can't train the actual move. I don't have a person. You can get a dummy and train on the dummy, but are you getting the same thing from it? What you can train with a dummy is your positional ability to go from there to there to there on the ground, maybe with a grappling dummy, but you're still not getting that live person fighting back, or how an arm needs to be extended and isolated to put pressure on the joint and blah blah blah. But what I think you can do there is like with the striking is you can look at the components for that, and you can improve your grip, you can improve your pulling abilities. I think that's important. Again, train what you can, stop trying to train what you can't.
And old school ways I think are better, like for the most part, like all this, like you were saying about these new inventions and things, they're pointless.
Oh, look, I mean, how many times do we see somebody with his foot inside a ring on the ground? There's two guys sparring with their foot in a hula hoop on the ground.
A tire or something.
What's that creating? That's just creating like a completely. It's a game. It's a game. It's a fantastic game, I suppose. It's interesting. I don't know. It's fun, but it's not being beneficial. It's not creating good movement profiles, is it? It's not creating. We've got to be very careful about it and just inventing drills for the sake of having drills, or being the novice personal trainer that thinks the more bits of equipment he uses, the better it's going to be. It's you've got to be quite ruthless. I think you've got to really triage what you're doing there, and it's like, is the juice worth the squeeze? That's a big thing, isn't it? How much messing around am I doing for what result am I going to get? And I look for a simpler, more beneficial aspect all the time. doing things just because they're interesting. I'm not into that, to be honest. I'm not into that. Some people are. It's not for me.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're training by yourself, it's very hard, I think, being specific.
Yeah.
You know, even say punching with cables and bands and things like that. It's not like throwing a real punch, because when you're throwing a real punch or a real kick, there is no load until you make contact.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're pressing a band forward or punching with a cable, there's load all the way. Even throwing things like a shot put, or throwing a dumbbell across the field or something like that. Again, the profile's all wrong on when the load comes in and when the resistance is there.
Yeah.
So you've got to be very careful that you're not creating a new way of punching that's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. It just affects your movement patterns. Just like shadow boxing with dumbbells. The weight's going down, not where you need to be.
As long as you know why you're doing it. If you're doing it because you want to work your shoulders and develop the ability to keep your hands up, like working on the speed bag, completely fine. But if you're doing that thinking you're going to end up with stronger punches,
not going to happen.
Simple as that. So understanding the movement's a big part of it. And then after a while, you understand the movement, and all you figure out is every movement is a pull.
Yeah.
All skeletal muscle, all it does is pull.
Yeah.
If that, sometimes it doesn't pull, it just stays where it is.
Yeah.
No muscles other than the stuff you've got in your intestines will push. So it's all a pull. So sometimes if you want to look into the body mechanics of something, the best you can do training by yourself is to establish what's doing the pulling of that particular punch, kick, hold, submission, whatever. Isolate that pull, work that pull, and create a stronger version of it. So you've just taken a component out of a machine, you've strengthened it, you put it back in the machine. When you do get a partner to train with, then you can work on the actual punch, kick, whatever. So sometimes I think that stop chasing, looking for this perfect drill where you're trying to replicate a particular technique. Just think about what can I do to enhance the components of that technique. So when I do get a partner, it'll be better. That's it.
Yeah, simple. Yeah.